Live from Richmond, Virginia, this is the People's Debate. Brought to you by AARP Virginia, Real Possibilities. The People's Debate. Now, tonight's host, Bill Fitzgerald.
Good evening. I'm Bill Fitzgerald. This is a special presentation of the People's Debate made possible by CBS 6, WCVE Studios, and AARP Virginia. We are live at WCVE Studios in Richmond. We begin now with moderator Robert Costa. Robert?
Good evening and welcome to the People's Debate. I'm your moderator, Robert Costa, reporter for the Washington Post and moderator of Washington Week on PBS. Tonight's debate is between the Democratic and Republican candidates for one of Virginia's U.S. Senate seats. Now let's meet the candidates. Joining us tonight are former Virginia Governor and current U.S. Senator, Democrat Tim Kaine, and his challenger, Chairman of the Prince William County Board of Supervisors, Republican Corey Stewart. Let's go over the rules for tonight's debate. Each candidate will get a 2-minute opening and closing statement, the order determined by coin flip. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to each question. After those exchanges, the first candidate to respond will get 60 seconds for a rebuttal. Any additional rebuttal time will be offered in an even-handed way. We also request the audience here tonight to refrain from applause or any other comments during the debate. Questions will be asked by myself and our panel. Let's meet them. Jim Dow is the State Director of AARP Virginia. Reba Hollingsworth is an anchor for CBS 6 This Morning. Craig Carper is the News Director for 88.9 WCVE Radio. And as decided by our coin flip last week, Senator Tim Kaine will give the first opening statement. Senator Kaine, good evening.
Good evening, and good evening to all of you. It is great to be here at the People's Debate. I'm so glad to be in my hometown of Richmond, and I want to thank all, and especially the AARP, for sponsoring this. Look, elections are about choices, and the choice in this election is very clear. It's a choice of governing style and philosophy, and it's best expressed by the themes of the campaign that I am running and my opponent is running. My theme is upbeat, positive, and forward-looking, a Virginia that works for all. My opponent's theme is angry and divisive, take Virginia back. I've been about opportunity for all since I moved to Richmond 34 years ago. As a civil rights lawyer, as a mayor who cut crime, built schools, and grew jobs, as a governor who led our state through the worst recession since the 1930s, winning accolades for business, climate, education, and management. And in the Senate, I worked together with all senators and administrations of both parties to advance causes that Virginians care about, expanding our military, fighting for pediatric cancer research, fighting to expand career and technical education, battling opioid addiction and campus sexual assault, recognizing Virginia Indian tribes. These are my priorities, and these are how I will continue to govern if I have the honor to be reelected. My opponent has also lived true to his theme, take Virginia back. Harsh attacks on immigrant communities, championing the causes of white supremacists and other extreme individuals, trafficking in bizarre conspiracy theories, such as that President Obama's birth certificate was forged, cutting his county's health budget, slashing school per pupil spending to the lowest in the region. He's governed in accord with his theme. So I think this race really isn't about Tim versus Corey. It's about the direction that you want Virginia to go. A Virginia that works for all, or take Virginia back. That's the choice before us, and I look forward to the discussion this evening.
Now, Chairman Stewart.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Bob. And I want to thank my wife, Maria, of 24 years over there, and my son, Luke, who's a senior in high school, and my son, Isaac, who's joining us remotely. He's first year of college. 52 years. The lowest unemployment rate in the United States in 52 years. The lowest unemployment rate for women in 65 years. The lowest unemployment rate ever for minorities in this country. All because of the tax cut passed by President Trump and Republicans in the United States Senate. And the stock markets and people's 401ks at an all-time high. That's what we've received with Republican leadership, President Trump. And what do the Democrats, what do Tim Kaine and the Democrats have to offer? Resistance. They resisted the tax cut. They resisted the change to NAFTA when we undid NAFTA, and just this morning was announced. Finally, we're going to have a new trade agreement that will protect American workers, protect American jobs, protect American industry. They resist everything, resisting securing our border. They resisted, and they were going to resist anybody who President Trump nominated to the United States Supreme Court. And of course, Senator Kaine and the Democrats in the United States Senate are resisting releasing the names of the United States senators, the other members of Congress, who have for years been sexually harassing women in the United States Senate and the halls of Congress. 268 separate claims, $17 million in payments, and as they go after Brett Kavanaugh, they haven't cleaned up their own house and cleaned up their own sexual harassment right there in the United States Senate. Yes, you got a choice between the past and hiding the past or the future.
Thank you, Chairman. Senator Kaine, the first question to you tonight. Earlier today, President Trump said this, talking to reporters, quote, "It is a very scary time for young men in America when you can be guilty of something you may not be guilty of. This is a very difficult time," end quote. Do you agree? And what would you do as senator to address the country's cultural divisions?
Well, look, the president was talking about the nomination of Judge Kavanaugh that's before the Senate right now. And this is a nomination I took very seriously. I met with him. I read his opinions, his law review articles. I watched the hearing, and then I declared that I was opposed to him. But in particular, the president was talking about the allegations that have been made against Judge Kavanaugh for a number of instances, allegations, that he sexually assaulted women in high school and college. These are very, very serious allegations. When they came out, my opponent, Stewart, called Dr. Ford's allegations, quote, "a bunch of crap." That's what he called her allegations. I think these allegations are serious. I think they raise a serious question of character about somebody on the Supreme Court. You're not entitled to be on the Supreme Court. And I obviously believe that what we are doing with the FBI and hopefully with the Senate is to try to get to the bottom of it, because I don't think we can put somebody on the Supreme Court unless we resolve these significant claims. The issue of sexual assault of women is not an unbelievable issue. Corey also minimized it after the allegation was made. He said, "What's next? Will we find that Judge Kavanaugh pulled a girl's pigtails in first grade?" There is no equivalency between pulling a first grader's pigtails and two 17-year-olds barricading a 15-year-old in a room and sexually assaulting her. We have to get to the bottom of it to determine what happened in high school and in college before we proceed to a vote. That's very, very important that we do.
Chairman Stewart.
Yeah, we got to get to the bottom of it. We got to get to the bottom of the fact that members of the United States Senate, members of the United States House have for more than 20 years been sexually harassing women in the halls of Congress. And this wasn't just based upon some rumor from nearly 40 years ago when Brett Kavanaugh was in high school. These allegations against members of the United States Senate, members of the United States House, are from now. $17 million in claims against members of Congress for sexual and other types of harassment, probably against some of their own staff, probably against some of their own interns. But they won't get to the bottom of it. Talking about getting to the bottom of it. Clean up your own house first. Clean up what's going on in the United States Senate. You have direct control over what happens in the United States Senate, and they won't do anything about it. In fact, this is your money. This is $17 million of our money that's being used to settle these claims. And it's not like it's getting better. It's been getting worse. The claims have been getting higher, escalating year by year. They're not refraining from sexual harassment in the United States Senate. They're getting worse. They're doing it more often. But yet they want to go back to Brett Kavanaugh's, Judge Kavanaugh's high school yearbook. It's ridiculous.
Senator Kaine, you have a minute.
Corey, don't make stuff up and don't pretend. Don't make stuff up. These claims over 30 years aren't senators and congressmen. They're the entire staff of the Capitol, groundskeepers, cafeteria workers, Capitol security. Second, you have no evidence that it's getting worse. Third, there's never been a claim filed against me or anyone in my office. You know that. And fourth, the Republicans have the majority. The only reason you know the stats you know is because I forced the Republican majority in the Senate to release those to you. I hope they'll release more. But second, don't pretend that you care about sexual assault. If you did, you wouldn't have called Dr. Ford a bunch of crap when she raised her allegations. If you did, you wouldn't have gone to Alabama and campaigned for Roy Moore after he had been outed as somebody who was a predator against teenage girls. And you wouldn't have gone last month to Amherst County and campaigned with Vance Wilkins, who had to resign as Speaker because of paying hush money to settle a sexual assault claim. You went there September 8th and campaigned with him, and you said he was a great speaker. A sexual harasser is not a great public servant.
Thank you, Senator. We're going to move to our panel. Jim Dow has a question for Chairman Stewart.
Chairman Stewart, Senator Kaine, thanks for being here tonight. Over the past 5 years, the prices of brand name prescription drugs rose 10 times higher than the rate of inflation, leaving 1 in 3 Americans unable to fill their prescription or take the full amount of medicine they are prescribed by their doctors. Chairman Stewart, what would you do in the U.S. Senate to help more Virginians get the prescription drugs that they need?
Well, you're absolutely right. And one of the problems, now, by the way, when the United States Senate, what they wanted to do, when the Democrats in the Senate and the House wanted to get the pharmaceutical companies on board with Obamacare, you know what they did? They cut a dirty little deal with the pharmaceutical companies. They said you can't even negotiate. You can't even negotiate with the pharmaceutical companies for a lower cost of the prescription drugs that seniors need. You can't even negotiate. And so what do we have? We have runaway pharmaceutical costs for our seniors who can't afford it. They can't afford their own pharmaceuticals. And this is after Obamacare was put into place. $7,500 for deductible to get the pharmaceuticals that you need under Medicare. Is that really affordable? When they talked about the Affordable Care Act, is that what they meant? You know, every single time that the federal government and the federal bureaucrats and federal politicians talk about improving something, hang on to your wallets. It's going to cost you a whole lot more, and it's not going to fix the problem. Here's what we have in this country. They told us in our Obamacare that our premiums would go down. They went up by 105% in 3 years. They said that our deductibles were going to go down. They went up on average between $6,000 and $12,000. They said you can keep your doctor. You can't. Every time that they talk about taking care of medical or any other sort of situation, they make the problem worse. And now he wants to give us even more of the same. You're not getting more, folks. You're not getting a Virginia for all. You're not getting an America for all. You're getting less.
Senator Kaine.
You need to hang on to your wallets if Corey Stewart were to get his hands on your health care. As chairman of the Prince William County Board of Supervisors, he cut health spending in his county by 35%, even as communicable diseases, infectious diseases were going up. He even proposed to eliminate the entire county public health department. His colleagues blocked him from doing so. He wants to eliminate the Affordable Care Act. He wants to eliminate Virginia's Medicaid expansion, and he wants to take billions out of the Medicaid program. Here's what we need to do about prescription drugs. Corey tried to blame it on Obamacare, and you know, Jim, that that's not true. Congress made a deal when President Bush did the Medicare D expansion in the early 2000s, and it was a very bad deal to not negotiate with pharmaceutical companies over prescription drug pricing. I am a co-sponsor of a bill to negotiate with pharmaceutical companies. There's no reason, none, that we should be able to negotiate with these companies when we're buying drugs for the VA and not for the Medicare program. And so that's something we need to do. And guess what? President Trump said as a candidate that we needed to do it. But since coming into office, he's refused to do it. So what we need to do, and I hope we'll have the opportunity to do after November 6th, is pass the bill allowing negotiation for prescription drug pricing, put that bill on President Trump's desk, and ask him to be true to what he said when he was candidate Trump.
Chairman Stewart, you have a minute.
6 years in the United States Senate. He talks about what he's going to do. He's had 6 years, 4 of which you had a Democratic president. He got nothing done, folks. Nothing. You know, when he first was elected to governor, and I was an elected official, I was like, well, here's a guy who's got some local background. Maybe he's going to work and get things done, reach across the aisle. He campaigned on fixing transportation in Virginia. You know how much more dollars were allocated to transportation when he was governor? Zero. Zero. You know what he did instead? He froze the wages for working men and women in the state government. He froze the wages for our state police. He froze the wages for everybody who works for state government. And then he claims to be a fiscal conservative. That's not fixing anything, folks. That's just delaying a problem. And when you freeze the wages, as you did when you were governor, of all of your employees, eventually they start to leave. And then you have a much more expensive problem. You had no respect for them, and that's why we had such a problem when you were governor.
Well,
very quickly.
I think you're missing something. I was governor in the worst recession since the 1930s. I had to make a lot of painful cuts. I started with cutting my own salary. You've doubled your office budget as chair of the Board of Supervisors, even as you've been cutting the county health department. But my state employees and everybody worked with me, and that's why we were named the best managed state in America in one of the toughest times since the 1930s.
Thank you, Senator Kaine. We're going to move to a next question from Reba Hollingsworth.
Senator Kaine, my first question to you. It has been more than a decade since the Commonwealth and the nation were rocked by the tragedy at Virginia Tech. But despite all the promises since then to improve our mental health care system, many say it is still broken. During a recent interview at CBS 6, State Senator Creed Deeds told us there was a week in February where there were less than 10 psychiatric beds available statewide in the public system. He said that, quote, "It scared the daylights out of me." What can Congress do to fix this broken system?
Reba, mental health is an issue that touches every family. And substance abuse, which is very closely connected, touches every family. 72,000 Americans died last year of drug overdoses, and many hundreds of thousands or more overdosed. That's why I'm so proud that we'll be voting on a bill in the next 48 hours, a bill that I worked significantly with Republican colleagues on, to send to the president's desk a bill to battle addiction. And this is something that we've worked together with the White House and believe that the president will sign. So the issues of mental health and the issues of addiction are very, very serious. They require that we make a more significant commitment at the federal level in funding, but they also require us to slightly change our focus. The wave of opioid deaths, for example, has finally made people realize that addiction is a mental health issue, is a public health issue, and so we've started to address it that way. Other drug addictions, methamphetamine, crack, we treated just as a law enforcement problem, and so drug overdose deaths continue to grow. Recently, I went to the Chesterfield County Jail to see a program in the Chesterfield Jail that deals with inmates, men and women who have both mental health and substance abuse issues. And programs like that, recovery homes, I added to the bill that President Trump will sign tomorrow. What we don't need is officials who will slash public health budgets. What we don't need is officials who will try to eliminate their entire public health department, as the chairman did.
Senator Kaine. Chairman Stewart. I control it.
Here's the problem. He talks about what he's going to do. He had 4 years as governor, 6 years in the Senate, and not a single major accomplishment, folks. Not a single one. He doesn't work with the president. He opposes everything that the president proposes. Everything. When the president proposed increase in the military budget, he voted against it in House Resolution 195. When the president proposed increase in the military compensation, he voted against it on January 19th of this year. When the president proposed rebuilding our military, he voted against it. He's against everything that President Trump and the Republicans proposes. Why? Because he's bitter about 2016. That's why he opposes everything. I get things done. You know, in my locality of Prince William County, by the way, tax bills are lower today, adjusted for inflation, than when I took office, the lowest in the region by 30%. And after Sandy Hook, when that terrible tragedy up there, while he was talking and doing nothing, I got things done. We had to raise our own funds. We put a police officer, an SRO, in every single middle school, every single high school in Prince William County. And we're about to place retired police officers and all the others because we have to protect our kids, not through just talk. He talks, but he doesn't do anything. I get things accomplished, protect my residents, keep taxes bills low, and improve their qualities of life.
Senator Kaine, you have a minute to respond.
Well, Corey, you're in my hometown, and the people here know what I've done. They know that we cut crime, built schools, and started a renaissance in our city when I was in local government. They know when I was governor, we were the best managed state in America, 1 out of 50. Every year I was governor, Forbes named us the best state to do business in the United States. Education Week named us the state where a child born today is most likely to be successful. Public transit investments, open space preservation, banning smoking in restaurants and bars, expanding early childhood education. I know you don't care about that stuff, but I think Virginians do. And in the Senate, President Trump has signed 17 pieces of legislation of mine, and there will be 2 more heading to his desk when we vote on our opioid bill tomorrow. I don't oppose the president on everything. We work together when it's good for the Commonwealth. That's why I'm so proud that in the last week, both the United Mine Workers and Virginia Business, a publication that's been going since 1986 and has never done a single political endorsement, both in the last week have endorsed my candidacy because I'm a doer and I'm looking forward.
You got a 17 rating from the NFIB, from small businesses. A 17 rating out of 100.
And Virginia Business
You've been terrible.
Me, not you.
You did not do anything to even attempt to fix the traffic problem that has plagued Northern Virginia, plagued Hampton Roads. I'm not done. And what you've done is absolutely nothing. High on the promises, low to absolutely low on delivery.
Very quickly.
Amtrak expansion to Richmond, Amtrak to Lynchburg.
Does he always get the last word?
I'm going to come right back to
Richmond.
Does he always get the last word?
No, he does not. We've been following a pattern.
I've noticed.
20 seconds if you want to respond to his latest point.
Look, if you look at his record, folks, there's nothing. There's no accomplishment. He promised when he became governor, he was going to fix transportation. Instead, he tried to raise taxes 4 times in Virginia. 4 times. Dropped the rating of doing business here in Virginia significantly. An absolute nightmare and a disaster, not just for Northern Virginia, but the whole state.
We're going to keep moving. We're going to Craig Carper with a question for Chairman Stewart.
Thank you. Chairman Stewart, we recently discovered in a New York Times article that 5 out of the 10 cities with the highest eviction rates in the nation are in Virginia: Richmond, Hampton, Newport News, Norfolk, and Chesapeake. What role does the federal government play, if any, in helping Americans obtain affordable housing that is safe and secure?
Well, here's the thing, is what we have to do in this country is raise all ships. A rising tide raises all ships. We had a tax cut, the biggest tax cut since 1981, which he voted against. He voted against it. Even CNN, liberal CNN, has acknowledged that this tax cut that is now in place has resulted in working class wages rising at the highest clip in 22 years. 4 million new jobs. Manufacturing is coming back. You cannot remain a prosperous nation unless you have manufacturing jobs. What the president is doing by standing up to our foreign trade partners, by forcing China, by forcing Japan, by forcing the European Union, and yes, now forcing the Canadians and the Mexican government to come to the bargaining table and make sure that we have free trade in both directions. And what that's resulting in is prosperity for everybody. American jobs are coming back. American prosperity is coming back. He voted against the tax cut before. He's going to vote against the tax cut when it's up for renewal in a couple of years. That's going to kill its economic growth. And it's not just the cost of housing. Everything will go up, and people's jobs will go down if you re-elect him and let the Democrats take control of the United States Senate.
Senator Kaine.
Craig, as you know, I was a housing attorney before I got into local government, worked on this issue a lot. The eviction stats in Virginia suggest that there's a need at the General Assembly level to revisit the landlord-tenant laws in the state. At the federal level, what can we do? I'll actually answer your question. We need to expand the low-income tax credit program. I am a co-sponsor of a bill that's bipartisan to do that, widely supported by stakeholders in the industry, and that will help us provide more affordable housing options for folks. When Corey was chair of the Board of Supervisors, Prince William was the foreclosure capital of Virginia. But let me talk about the tax cut. I did vote against the tax cut. What a missed opportunity. No tax reform since 1986. And what we ended up with was this: deep, permanent tax cuts for corporations, tiny, temporary tax cuts that expire for individuals, add $2 trillion to the debt. That's what the tax cut bill did. For the first time, and people in the audience know this, people in Prince William and Richmond know this, it was a pillar of the tax code that both individuals and corporations could fully deduct their state and local taxes since the beginning of the income tax. The tax bill broke that. Guess what? Now corporations can fully deduct their state and local taxes, but individuals for the first time are limited. Why would we do a tax cut bill that benefited corporations over individuals? Why do a bill that benefits investors over the people who bring home wages and salaries? We need to do tax reform, but we need to do it right so that regular people can benefit, not just the wealthiest and big corporations.
Thank you, Senator. You have a minute to respond, Chairman.
Yes, it was a missed opportunity. It was a missed opportunity for Senator Kaine to actually show some bipartisan cooperation. You missed it. You had an opportunity to vote for the biggest tax cut for Americans since 1981. Since 1981. You know, the problem with the deficit, and it's interesting you bring that up, is because even though as we cut taxes, revenues to the United States government are going up $19 billion this year. You know why the deficit's going up? Because these guys in the United States Senate don't know how to control their budgets. They raised their budget by $275 billion in a single year. Even as government revenues grew, they continued to spend more. That's why we have a deficit. That's why we have such this long-term deficit that is lagging down on economic growth in the long term. They don't want to take the tough decisions. When you're a local government, you have to do that. You've got to make some tough decisions. But one thing I've never done, as he has,
Thank you, Chairman Stewart.
I've never cut law enforcement.
You cannot cheerlead a $2 trillion debt increasing tax.
That was my 60-second rebuttal.
And then we're going to suddenly complain about the debt, Corey.
Are we going to have the same rules for both sides here, Bob, or what?
Gentlemen, if you're going to jump in after the 60-second rebuttal, I'm going to have to give you both equal time to respond if you choose to jump in. So you have 20 seconds, you have 20 seconds because you chose to jump in. Finish your 20 seconds, Senator.
I did mine in 10 seconds, and I'm going to stick with what I said.
20 seconds, Chairman.
The whole situation is this. He's an automatic no. Now, he comes up with a couple of small examples of things here and there, but not a single major accomplishment. He voted against your tax cut. When that tax cut comes up to be expires, if he's there, he's going to vote against it. He voted against it already. And all this economic growth that we're seeing, the rise of the stock market, everything, it goes away.
Chairman Stewart, thank you. Jim Dow.
Thank you. Almost 1.5 million Virginians count on their monthly Social Security benefits. For many Virginians, it's what allows them to put the lights on, to keep their homes cool on a hot summer day, and to put food on the table. While Social Security payments to current and soon-to-retire beneficiaries are safely on schedule, the prospects are bleaker in the long term. If nothing is done by leaders in Washington, benefits will be cut by about 25% 15 years from now. Senator Kaine, if you win, what will you do to protect Social Security for current and future beneficiaries?
Well, Jim, I think Social Security is probably the best piece of domestic legislation that's ever passed in this country. Before it was passed, there was a 50-50 chance if you would retire and slide into poverty after you'd spent your whole life working and being a Little League coach and a Sunday school teacher. When Social Security passed, that number has gone down to about 10%, which is still too high, but we have to protect the program. The program was passed by Democrats with no Republican support, and over the years, and including recently, Republicans, including President Bush, have floated efforts to privatize or change the benefit levels or raise the retirement age. I will protect Social Security because it's a program that works. What do we need to do long term? As we live longer, you're right, the number of beneficiaries to those paying into the program change. So how do we keep the program solvent over the long term? I think the right way to do it is to take the payroll tax cap and above the current cap, not have a full tax, but have a modest tax above the cap and not raise the benefit levels. And that would, and just as small a tax as you could to keep it solvent, that would keep this program solvent for years to come. But what I wouldn't do is slash safety net programs in the Affordable Care Act as my opponent would do. end Medicaid expansion, as my opponent would do dramatic work to gut the Medicaid program, as my opponent would do. I will fight to preserve the safety net programs that our seniors, our children, and those with disabilities rely on.
Chairman Stewart.
Well, there you go, folks. You just heard what he's going to do. He wants to raise your taxes. Raise your taxes. You know, Social Security, and by the way, when Democrats put it into place in the 1930s, there were some good Democrats back then. It was a good party. It stood up for the small guy, for the working man. No longer. Now what you want to do is increase taxes on the little guy and the working person. That's all you're trying to do. And here's the thing, Senator. The problem with Social Security isn't that these men and women in this audience and watching out there tonight aren't paying enough. They've been paying their entire working lives into Social Security. Social Security, if it weren't for the fact that you in the Senate and other Democrats keep dipping into the Social Security Trust Fund, spending the money that these men and women have placed into Social Security and entrusted to you, and then you have turned around and spent their money on things like settling sexual harassment claims against United States senators. It's ridiculous. It's the theater of the absurd. And now you want to raise even more taxes, even though there's no problem with Social Security? All you're trying to do is raise more taxes so you can spend more on other stuff, not shore up Social Security.
The theater of absurd is the answer. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. I interrupted.
You have a minute to respond.
The theater of the absurd is the answer that you just gave. Didn't answer the question. Made stuff up about the Social Security Trust Fund being raided. Look, we've got to figure out a way to keep this program solvent. And you have a strategy and I have a strategy. Your strategy is to make cuts. Your strategy is to go. Your strategy is to go in, but you've got a track record. You've got a track record.
I've got a track record of supporting transportation, education, and public safety. You've got a track record of cutting all of those things.
So give me my time back. Your track record is going into every safety net program and cutting it. Health in your county by 35%. Trying to eliminate the health department. Speaking out against the Affordable Care Act and being in favor of eliminating it and slashing Medicaid. Wanting to take the Medicaid expansion away from the 400,000 Virginians who've just gotten the Medicaid expansion. It is your party that's proposing to take Medicare and turn it into a voucher, to take Social Security and privatize it, to block grant the Medicaid program. We Democrats will stand up for these programs against your efforts to take them away.
Time's up. You have 20 seconds.
There he goes again, just blaming the Republicans for everything. Blaming the Republicans. Look, you know how somebody is going to be, you know what their true character is? When times get tough. When things got tough in Prince William County, and they certainly did, you know what I never cut? I never cut public safety. I never cut a single firefighter. I never cut a single police officer. I never cut their wages. And we continue to finance transportation improvements because the state, under Governor Kaine, refused to do so.
Thank you. Just a reminder for this debate, we start with 90 seconds. Each candidate answers the same question. Then there's a 60-second rebuttal. We're going to try to keep the debate moving, but if people want to jump in, we will give each candidate equal time. I have a question turning our attention back to Washington. This is for Chairman Stewart. Chairman, if you're elected to the U.S. Senate, will you support your party's current leader in the Senate for that leadership role?
He's growing on me. He is. After seeing the shenanigans by Tim Kaine and the Democrats, this circus that they're conducting in the Judiciary Committee against a good man in Judge Kavanaugh, you know what? I couldn't say something nice before about Lindsey Graham, but I got to tell you, he's one of my new heroes. This guy stood up. This guy stood up. I'm talking about Lindsey Graham stood up to the shenanigans by Senate Democrats for allegations unproven in Brett Kavanaugh's high school yearbook from 36 years ago. And meanwhile, in the United States Senate, they're absolutely just going bonkers about sexually harassing people in the United States Senate. You paid $900,000 last year, Senator, of our money to settle sexual harassment claims against members of the United States Senate, and you won't release the names. And you said, well, I asked for the data. But you know what you never asked for? You never asked for the names. You never identified the sexual predators inside the United States Senate. You never asked for that information. You refused to provide that information. We don't know who they
Senator,
are. We don't know who's costing us all this money. I think it's complete hypocrisy for you to stand up there and talk about what Brett Kavanaugh may not have done in high school, but at the same time, you won't clean up your own house.
Thank you, Chairman. Senator, the question was, will you support your party's current leader in the Senate for that leadership role if you win re-election?
Yes, I will. And if you like Senator McConnell so much, ask the majority leader to release the information. The majority controls it. The only reason you have the only reason you have the only reason you have the information that you're citing is because I forced the Senate to release it. I forced the Senate to release it.
To release what information?
And the other thing that I find offensive, is when you stand up here and say that Dr. Ford's allegations and Ms. Ramirez's allegations are Democratic shenanigans. There is zero evidence that these women came forward with stories of sexual assault because of any effort by the Democrats. Zero evidence. But isn't this just what you do? When a woman comes forward with a claim of sexual assault, you demean her.
That's
you
what you've done.
You call it a bunch of crap. You say it's the equivalent of somebody pulling Dr. Ford's pigtails. You go campaign with Roy Moore in Alabama. You skipped a meeting of your board of supervisors where they were voting on opioid issues to go campaign with a guy in Alabama who had been outed by many women as somebody who preyed on them when they were teenagers. And just last month, don't pretend to care about sexual assault here with this crowd. Just last month, you go to Amherst County and you campaign with Vance Wilkins and you say he was a great speaker when he had to resign in disgrace as speaker because he paid hush money to settle a sexual harassment
Thank you, Senator Kaine. Chairman Stewart, you have a minute to respond.
What are the names, Senator? What are the names? If you're not involved in these sexual harassment claims against United States senators, why won't you release the information? You said that you asked for the information. I suppose you're referring to your December 7th, 2017 letter. Do you remember what you said in that letter?
I do.
Do you know what the information is?
And subsequent requests.
You asked, not for the names, Senator. You didn't ask for the names of the predators in the United States Senate who are preying on young women. You asked for the data. You asked for statistics. Is this just a matter of statistics?
That's what you now have.
And you know something? We still don't have the names of the United States senators and members of Congress who have been sexually harassing women in your own house in the United States Senate. We still don't know who they are. $17 million in claims is settling these sexual harassment claims, and they're still out there. Is Senator Booker on that list? Is Senator Kaine on that list? Is Senator Blumenthal on that list?
Wait a second.
This is like a Joe McCarthy tactic.
You have 20 seconds.
That's what you're doing. Joe McCarthy is what you are doing to Brett Kavanaugh.
Chairman, your time's over for the rebuttal. You have 20 seconds, Senator Kaine, and then we're going to finish with 20 seconds.
This is a Joe McCarthy tactic. He has the information that I forced the Republicans to release. The Republicans have the majority. We want them to release more. But for him to stand here and tell you these are claims against senators and House members for sexual assaults is just false. This is 30 years of claims on all kinds of allegations against staffers, groundskeepers, police, etc. But I'll make plain again because of the way you've raised the question. There has been no claim filed against me or anyone in my office.
Chairman Stewart, 20 seconds.
And he knows that.
Senator, Chairman Stewart.
And he knows that.
Senator, Chairman Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. 268 claims, $17 million. And what does he ask for? The statistics. He never asked for the identities of the senators. In fact, he said in his letter of December 7th, 2017, he wouldn't release the names of those who have been sexually harassing their staff, those in the United States Senate and the House
Chairman,
who are guilty of sexual harassment.
Thank you. And gentlemen, let's just try to avoid interruptions. We've structured the debate to try to have you each have your say in equal time. We're turning now, we're doing our best. We're turning now to Craig Carper, who has a question for Senator Kaine.
Senator, it seems like both of you had more to say on transportation, and I have a transportation question. America has a D+ rating for infrastructure from the American Society of Civil Engineers. There are many things that Republicans and Democrats disagree on, but most Americans believe we need to fix our roads and bridges and provide additional transportation options. How do we fund that?
We have to tackle this question in the Senate, and I was heartened when President Trump said he wanted to do an infrastructure bill. And he actually has a solid infrastructure team. But instead, we've spent most of the president's first year or so trying to take health insurance away from tens of millions of people. In the spring, he rolled out a transportation plan that had some good elements, including a bill that I have about workforce training for those who would build our roads and bridges and broadband. But then he abandoned the plan and said we would deal with it after the midterm. I hope after the midterm we'll stop trying to take health insurance away and we'll get back to it. And it will involve a whole series of strategies. It will be road, it will be rail, it will be broadband. But I'll use some of the same strategies I used when I was governor. We built rail to Dulles, got it to Wheelie Avenue, and now as senator, I've helped get funding to take it all the way out to Dulles. How have we funded it? It's been a combination. It's been a combination of property taxes in the corridor whose values are enhanced by the rail to Dulles. We did hot lanes on the Beltway and down 95 through Prince William County. We got that deal done when I was governor. That was paid for by tolls on the hot lanes. So there's a number of different strategies depending upon the project, but this is something that we need to work together with the president on. I was very proud during a very difficult time, worst recession in 1930s, that programs like expanded Amtrak, rail to Dulles, hot lanes, programs like the Pulse, public transit and Hampton Roads, we were able to move those forward. Amtrak service to Lynchburg and Roanoke, and we need to do more.
Thank you. Chairman Stewart.
Well, it's not bad enough that he campaigned in 2005 on fixing transportation in Virginia and didn't provide a single dollar for road improvements in Virginia during his entire term as governor. It's not bad enough that in his 6 years in the United States Senate, he hasn't done anything to bring in Virginia's fair share of transportation funding. Now he's trying to take credit for the accomplishments of Governor Bob McDonnell. Do you know what he got done on transportation when he was governor of Virginia? Well, he got something done all right. He shut down the rest stops out of spite, out of pure spite, said they didn't have the money even to keep the rest stops open. And then when Governor McDonnell came into place and he did an audit of his VDOT, what do they find? $1 billion of unspent road improvement funds. $1 billion, Senator. And then to finance, who thought this was a good idea, he gave away the Dulles Toll Road, which up to that point was owned by the citizens of Virginia, and he gave it over to an unelected body in Washington, D.C. that has no accountability. And today, as a result of that, we have sky-high tolls in Northern Virginia. Sky-high. $40 each way on I-66. He did nothing on transportation. Absolutely nothing. And it was left up to us on the local level to fix our roads, which I accomplished even during a bad time.
Stewart. You have 1 minute to respond.
We had a similar debate about this the other night at the Capital One Auditorium in Tyson's. And Corey made the same point that Governor Kaine did nothing. And I said, walk out the door. Do you see that rail to Dulles right in front of you? That's what I got done as governor, one of many projects I got done as governor. Go to Prince William County. Do you see those lanes that are running in the middle of Interstate 95 that are being expanded? We got deals to do hot lanes on the Beltway and hot lanes on I-95. This nothing that he just keeps repeating, it shows that he isn't paying attention to what we're actually getting done. And as the senator, look, we've gotten funds to help expand Amtrak and rail service from D.C. to Richmond, to do corridor improvements, to fix the Memorial Bridge, to work on projects like the Pulse public transit project here in Richmond. And I hope that we have a chance to work with the president when he gets serious about infrastructure. Let's stop trying to take people's health care away, like my opponent would like to do, and let's get an infrastructure bill done.
What are you going to take credit for
20
next
seconds if you're going
that you had nothing to do with? The tax cut that you voted against? What are you going to take credit for? All of the accomplishments that you're mentioning right now were stopped by you. They were only done after we elected Governor Bob McDonnell. All of those things that you mentioned are the accomplishments of his administration, not yours. All you did was to freeze the compensation for state employees.
Senator Kaine, 20 seconds.
I don't need to respond to that because he's just making it up. You can go back and look who got the rail to Dulles deals.
Let's leave it there, gentlemen. We have to go to Reba Hollingsworth, who has a question for Chairman Stewart.
Chairman Stewart, my question for you. The Confederate Monument debate received a lot of attention in Virginia in the wake of the deadly violence in Charlottesville last year. There were 4 arrests just today. In Richmond, where we have Monument Avenue, a committee has been formed to discuss the future of these statues. Virginia voters oppose removing these statues 57 to 33%. Chairman Stewart, how do you respond to those who still want to take these statues down?
You know, there's been a lot of talk about this, and let's just simplify it. He wants to take down the statues. I say leave them alone. But let's talk about the real issues here. Let's talk about what's really going on. You know, there's one of the last remnants of state-sponsored discrimination that's occurring right now, and that's happening within our colleges and universities in this country. Do you know that colleges and universities, the select ones, require Asian American students to score on average? If your parents are from China or Korea or Vietnam or Pakistan or India, you have to score on average 280 points higher on your SATs than other students. That's wrong. And that's discrimination that's going on right now here in the United States. And that is why when I'm in the United States Senate, I will introduce legislation that will prohibit any college or university anywhere in the United States that accepts federal aid from using race as a basis for college admissions. It's time to end state-sponsored discrimination in our colleges and universities.
Senator Kaine.
We shouldn't discriminate in colleges and universities, but I want to, Reba, deal with your question. You talked about statues and you talked about Charlottesville. Here's my view about Charlottesville. It wasn't about statues. It was about hatred. When people come with tiki torches and they chant blood and soil or Jews will not replace us, that's not about statues. That's about anti-Semitism and hatred. And we have to speak out against anti-Semitism and hatred. Corey Stewart was a frequent colleague and champion of Jason Kessler, who helped organize that Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. Corey Stewart was a frequent champion of a guy named Paul Nehlen, who was connected with the people who put that rally on, who was a white supremacist and anti-Semite. Corey even called him, quote, my personal hero. Corey Stewart went to Alabama to campaign for Roy Moore. He hasn't defended that yet. Roy Moore had been outed not only as somebody who was preying on teenage girls, but Roy Moore had famously said African Americans were better off in the slavery times. And Corey Stewart, as late as last December, was still trafficking in the conspiracy theory that President Obama's birth certificate was forged. Statute issues can be dealt with by the local governments or state governments if they listen to their colleagues. But what we can't stand is hatred. And we have to stand against it. And we have to make sure that public officials who associate with it are not elected.
You have 1 minute, Chairman Stewart.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. You know, I despise racism and bigotry in all its shapes and forms. And if I find out that somebody is that way, I've absolutely denounced them. And I did that in the case of the gentleman that he mentioned. But here's the thing, folks. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And you know what we've had here in Virginia today in the 5th Congressional District? Who he shacks up with, not literally, but his campaign is together in Charlottesville, sharing office space with their congressional candidate, Leslie Coburn, who is an open anti-Semite, who has called Israelis a menace, who has blamed every problem in America upon people of the Jewish faith. And he's together in that office with her. And he hasn't condemned that. And you know another thing he hasn't condemned? The far-left, violent, left-wing group of Antifa. He will not condemn them. He's very quick to condemn somebody who's absolutely got no connection to him. But when it comes to somebody who's a little bit closer, he won't condemn it.
Thank you, Chairman Stewart. We're going to give the senator 20, and you can come back with 20.
I condemn any violence committed by anyone.
What about Antifa?
Excuse me. Any violence committed by anyone. We can peacefully protest no violence. And second, your claim about Leslie Coburn is just wrong. She wrote a book critical of American-Israeli foreign policy, but for you to say that she's blaming all America's ills on Jewish people, that's just, you know, with Corey, it's make it personal or make it up.
Kaine. Chairman Stewart, 20 seconds.
Look it up, folks. He is sharing office space with Leslie Coburn, who has said that somehow American Jewish people are in charge of America's foreign policy. Talk about conspiracy theories. He hasn't denounced that. He hasn't denounced her. He hasn't denounced any of her radical anti-Semitic views. In fact, he's sharing office space with her. Antifa is a radical, left-wing, violent organization you have refused to condemn.
Thank you. Gentlemen, we're running out of time, so this is going to be a 30-second answer from each of you. No rebuttals. Should, and this will go to Senator Kaine first, followed by 30 seconds for Chairman Stewart. Should Special Counsel Robert Mueller's ongoing investigation of Russia interference in the 2016 election be protected by further measures in the Senate? Yes or no?
Yes. We need to protect it so that we can find anyone who is culpable. There have already been 31 indictments or guilty pleas, but we especially need to protect it because when the story comes out, it will help us protect the integrity of every election into the future. That's why we need to protect it.
Chairman Stewart.
It should be ended. And you know what? It's holding us back. But you know what we do need an investigation of? The 268 claims of racial and sexual harassment against members of the United States Senate and the House of Representatives. Who is going to look into that? These guys in their puff shirts, looking down at Judge Kavanaugh. And meanwhile, in the United States Senate, they've paid $17 million of your tax money to settle sexual harassment claims against them. Who's going to look into that?
Thank you, Chairman. That is all the time we have for questions tonight. But we'll move now to closing statements. Let's start with Senator Kaine.
Thank you, Bob, and thanks to everybody. Look, I said you would see a choice, and I think you have. And it goes back to the very fundamental question. Do you want a Virginia that works for all, that's about inclusion in every corner of this Commonwealth, pulling together, or do you want to take Virginia back? I think I know Virginians fairly well after representing my city, Commonwealth, and country for the last 24 years, and I think they want to pull together, look forward, and embrace that notion of a Virginia that worked for all that I've used in my entire career. And I don't think Virginians want to go back. When someone stands on the stage tonight and talks about 268 sexual harassment claims against senators, there aren't. That $17 million was paid by senators, that hasn't been the case. That's the total claim for 30 years for every employee that works on the Hill. When he suggests names of people who were involved in these, well, is so-and-so on the list, is so-and-so on the list? Well, we don't have to guess about names. Defend your palling around with Roy Moore. Defend your decision to go campaign with Vance Wilkins and call him a great speaker, the only speaker in the history of this Commonwealth who has had to resign in disgrace because he paid hush money to settle a sexual harassment claim. So, Corey, you can stand here all you want and make stuff up, and that would take Virginia back. But at the end of the day, I'm about moving us forward together. That's what I've done here as a teacher at the University of Richmond. That's what I've done as a civil rights lawyer for 17 years. That's what I've done as a mayor and a governor and a senator. Working together with colleagues on both sides of the aisle, working together with both the Obama and Trump administrations. I have a lot of disagreements with this administration, but that doesn't stop me from advancing everywhere we can and defending everything we must. I hope, like you look at a Virginia that's fundamentally looking forward and optimistic and inclusive. I hope, like me, you don't want to take Virginia back. That is the choice that's on the table in this election. Let's move forward.
Chairman Stewart.
Thank you very much. Thanks again for hosting this debate. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been governing the second largest locality in the Commonwealth of Virginia for 12 years, the most diverse locality in all of Northern Virginia. And we've had our fair share of challenges, but I've been able to work across party lines. In fact, one of the members who I work most closely with is, in fact, a Democrat. Because, yes, we have things that are dividing us. Yes, we have differences of opinion. But if we can focus together, that's what I found on the local level. On the things where we have an agreement, we can get things accomplished. And when times were tough in Prince William County, I cut the budget. Yes, I did. I made some very tough decisions. But I never cut law enforcement. I never cut firefighters. I never cut salaries of county employees. I increased them. And when the state didn't do its job under Governor Kaine, we actually spent the largest road building program on a local level to build our own roads because they weren't doing it. And what are you getting from Senator Kaine? 4 years as governor, 6 years in the United States Senate. Not a single major accomplishment, folks. Not a single one. He votes against automatically anything and everything that President Trump proposes. When the president proposed increase in the military budget, he voted against it. When the president proposed a 355-ship Navy, he voted against it. When the president proposed a modest housing allowance and pay raise for our military personnel, he voted against it. He votes against everything that they do and propose. He can't get things done because he's unwilling to work across the aisle. And now, at the height of hypocrisy, as they look at Judge Kavanaugh's high school yearbooks, they, in the United States Senate, look it up in his letter of December the 7th, 2017. He refuses to name the United States senators who are actually conducting sexual harassment today and for which you, the taxpayers, have had to pay $17 million in claims.
Thank you, Chairman Stewart. Senator Kaine, Chairman Stewart, I want to thank you both for taking part in tonight's debate. An important night for Virginia, for democracy. Appreciate the time both of you put into this campaign. Wishing you both the best of luck in the weeks to come. I'd also like to thank tonight's panel, Jim Dow of AARP Virginia, Reba Hollingsworth for CBS 6, and Craig Carper for WCVE. I'm Robert Costa. Let's send it back to Bill Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Bob. This program has been brought to you by AARP Virginia, WTVR-CBS 6, and WCVE PBS. That's a community idea station. Thanks again to the candidates for appearing together on this stage tonight. And I want to thank you, the voters of Virginia, and our live audience for watching. Please don't forget, Election Day is just a little over a month away. On behalf of everyone who brought this debate to you, I'm Bill Fitzgerald. Good night.